So I read this manga for one reason. I did not know about it. It is currently ranked 6 out of the best-selling manga for the first half of this year. That is an incredible accomplishment for a story that isn't within the main spotlight, that isn't within the public spotlight, barely, and that isn't considered mainstream. Weekly Shonen Jump, Jump Plus, etc. So how would it be that this story, that is relatively unknown for the most part, that doesn't have many chapters, that is currently ranked number 6 out of the top 10 best-selling manga of this year? To say that this isn't huge is being disingenuous. It is massive. It is blowing up very rapidly. So I was intrigued. I decided to read it. Didn't know anything about it. What I got was a rather enjoyable experience, a little bit episodic that is filled with so much mystery and a very unique main character. Do Not Say Mystery is about a boy named Totino. Very normal boy, college student, simple, curly haired, lovely individual, beautifully drawn, that has a unique ability. It's not a power, but something that he's very good at doing. Observing, deciphering, unraveling an individual. You know how detectives like to pick apart their prey before they truly make this conclusive final closing statement? Consider it like that. Totino, for whatever reason, whatever his past experiences or maybe his childhood trauma is indicative to, has given him the opportunity to fully understand people based on the smallest of things. The way they speak, the way their hands move, the way their body's positioned, the pitch or tone within their voice. So many little things that everyone else would take for granted that you would just glance over. He remembers so vividly and is able to precisely understand the meaning for it. Why your lip twitches that way, why your eyebrow is raised to this many degrees. And with this, he's able to decipher whether or not you're telling the truth, whether you're lying, whether you're hiding a secret. But he's also able to identify what type of individual you may be. He's not conclusive, but he's more open-ended statement. He likes to put things in a way that is very approachable for people to either agree or disagree with, but most of the time people will agree with the observation. He's able to understand an individual based off small mannerisms. This is a very impressive thing and something that seems very vital to detectives or profilers so they can understand the people they're questioning. Is this individual innocent? Did they commit a crime? So how does this all apply to Totino? He's just a normal boy. He gets dragged into so many different things. Firstly, he gets accused of murder. Right off the bat, the first thing you're going to read for this story is that he is accused of murder, and he's so calm about it, doing exactly what I've just talked about, deciphering every single individual that walks into that room to question him, so much so that he's able to help people, able to provide them some sort of benefit to what problem they may be having. He doesn't necessarily fix it completely, but he's able to provide comfort, aid, a different opinion, a different approach, something that may potentially help if that person wants to take it. And it isn't out of malice, it isn't out of control or having power over that person, but just something that he does because he notices it and because he can. You may think this is a little bit invasive, and he too self-recognizes this. He doesn't always tend to do it with people, but when something sparks his interest, when something seems like there should be more to it, he'll start to dig a little bit further. He may even prompt some questions or some ideas for this person to follow along with, so he can have a better understanding. It would turn out that even though he's being accused of murder, the person that actually committed the crime was the officer investigating him, the one that was very sure that Totino, our main character, was the killer. Funny how that works. And the only way that Totino was able to realize this is because of how much the officer investigating him would actually talk, finding out all of these pieces of crucial, vital, important information that he could use to paint a very hypothetical but vivid picture, vivid enough that everyone in the room started to believe it. And very quickly, the officer just broke. He cracked. He was the one that killed that boy. And Totino could even provide some sort of hypothetical reason. This first chapter that I'm talking about was a very strong introduction because you get everything for Totino's character. His simplicity, his quirkiness, his love for curry, but also his intelligence, how he calculates people, unravels them in so many intricate ways to fully articulate some sort of perfect response. It almost seems inhuman, almost robotic in a way. Yet his memory, his collection of thoughts, how he processes information, how he links things together, and the story that he's able to propel forward is so vivid. There is a lot of dialogue within this series, but it's used so incredibly well that it keeps you engaged, keeps you guessing, and with the mystery swirling around all of it, you're kind of confused. You're not sure who's telling the truth or what the whole purpose of this situation is. You know something has happened, but you don't know where it's going. At one moment it could get really dark, but then at the other it could be really bright and bubbly. And that's this very weird duality that Do Not Say Mystery has. Because our main character is so emotionally unattached from things, but is so calculated in response, and is getting constantly thrown into all of these different mysteries, you never know where the story is going to go, especially with such a strong opener like that. I also found that the chapters are extremely long, at least where I read it. I'm not sure if they were compiled into different volumes, because it does say it has 10 volumes, or if the chapters themselves, just the singular ones, are very lengthy. I'm not sure. The way I read it was kind of perfect, because one mystery for one chapter, and then another mystery, depending on its scale or intensity, would be linked with a handful of others. So in some sense it is episodic, but they're not entirely sectioned off from one another. There is loose connections that joins them rather easily. It might be a character or an idea or something that lingers from the end of one chapter into the continuation of the next. These mysteries can be very complex, very grandeur, very obnoxious sometimes, and you'll probably pretty easily find yourself questioning the integrity of it. Would this legitimately happen? This seems rather absurd, but what helps ground or somewhat humanize the situation is, ironically enough, Totino. The way he's so very calculative towards people and how they act and all these things that they do, and him being able to provide this level of information and perspective of things, you get a completely different take on the scenario, which provides yourself a different perspective, which provides a different enjoyment. And for me personally, it was rather interesting. I found myself wanting to explore the story more, wanting to continue down different things, because its use of dialogue and how it likes to play tricks on you and all of these twists and turns that come into the bigger picture is really addicting. And Totino is like a pseudo detective, but he doesn't treat himself like one, but other people treat him like one. So a mystery manga that is within the top 10 best-selling of this year currently, halfway, doesn't have an anime, has about 10 odd volumes with really long chapters, somewhat episodic, and is relatively unknown. How is this even possible? I think how grounded the story is, even with how crazy these mysteries become, it's a nice change of pace. Seeing one individual completely break the psychology of another individual, to tear them apart, to understand them, to indulge within their fantasies or their ideas or all of these different sub-facets that no one else would notice on a day-to-day basis, is so incredibly interesting. And while for a lot of people it might be repetitive or unenjoyable or something that just seems like way too much dialogue, if you're someone that is into mystery, someone that's into the detective side of things and unraveling the mystery in a very methodical way that is very much grounded within its approach, you will absolutely love this manga. Not only does the main character provide such a innocent human outlook on the story, while ironically having the most mechanical, unhuman-like observation skills that you could ever imagine, is paired so well with the mysteries that he finds himself within. It makes for a very engaging experience and you learn a lot. Now, entertainment factor is obviously rather subjective, but as far as mystery manga and detective manga go, this is definitely a great showcase for it. The only problem that I see a lot of people might actually have is that it's episodic, that not many things truly carry over to other mysteries, to the other stories being told. They feel very secluded in that sense. So while one or two characters may traverse over, or a general idea or theme, because they feel inherently secluded, sometimes it feels a little bit odd to read in order, consecutively, or in a row, I should say. If you try and binge read it, it might be very tiresome, could get boring very quickly because there's a lot of dialogue, and you kind of blitz through one mystery within one chapter. But on the upside, a lot of it is centered around multiple mysteries combining into one, or the grand picture that overlays the whole thing. So there's a span of 4 to 6 chapters there that's going to be one big massive mystery with a bunch of little things within it that they have to decipher and uncode in order to get to the bigger picture. So it's very elaborate in that sense, and I feel like it definitely draws you into the narrative, into the characters, which is probably arguably its other weakest point, is that it doesn't really have many characters. Totino is the only individual and they're very slow with building him up. It's very backwards with how the story wants to tell itself. You don't really know anything about him other than the fact that he has this very obscure ability and his childhood is potentially traumatic, a bit of a rough spot for him to mention. the more you kind of get through the story, the more he opens up, the more he changes a little bit, the more he talks, and the more he encounters people. I think that's where the beauty of this story really lies upon, is his interaction with either completely random individuals within the world, because it can utilize this very unique ability that he has. And because he doesn't really care about being obnoxious or forthcoming, he pretty much just lets it all loose. He shoots every question, answer, response out there, which results in all of this dialogue and people being very confused, but a lot of it lands and sticks and makes for a pretty enthralling experience when you start to get into it. I would say that if you're looking for a mystery manga, a detective manga, something that plays on these facets and an individual unraveling it with intelligence, finding out the answers, figuring out all the clues and putting them all together in a very intuitive and intellectual type of way that is completely irrelevant to the case. He's not an officer, he's not a detective, he's just a normal boy that's been thrown into the situation. You will absolutely love this story. If you want to see how he breaks apart people mentally, emotionally, physically, even spiritually, applying all of these different philosophical and psychological tactics on this person that isn't necessarily invasive, but more so just to understand them potentially better than they do themselves, this is the manga for you. Through and through, you will wholeheartedly enjoy it. If this doesn't really sound interesting or up your alley, try and read the first chapter and see how you go with that. You might find yourself rather pleasantly surprised, just like I did. With that, however, I want to thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Drink plenty of water, leave a like and subscribe. I greatly appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.